Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Born of the Gods here from Valencia, Spain. My name is Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Zach Hill, and we have a powerhouse Hall of Fame feature match here. Brian Kibler versus Shuhei Nakamura. Shuhei's on the right, Kibler's on the left. Kibler in the top 25 pro rankings right now. Shuhei is as well, I believe. We'll have to take a look at that. Anyway, we're underway, though. An aggressive, angry Sedge Scorpion is getting into the red zone there from Shuhei Nakamura. Normally better suited to play D, sits back on defense a little bit better. But in the early turns, it has been known to get in there for a point of damage here and there. It looks like Kibler's on green-blue and Shuhei also on green-blue. So
also
the green-blue. Whoa, look at that turn, or the first play there for Brian Kibler, though. Prophet of Crewfix. That's a Courser of Crewfix, and it's a new rare.
Yeah, and it is. And it's a very Brian Kibler rare. It's a mid-rangey green card that gains you a moderate amount of card advantage.
Like and a moderate amount of life.
Moderate amount of life. It's a little bit overstated. 2-4 for 3, really powerful and limited anyway. Probably not going to be attacking into that Sedge Scorpion, although he did get card advantage off of it already. But yeah, it's definitely the kind of start you want if you're Kibler.
It's a really nice way to sort of passively take over the game, right? Like, as long as Shuhei isn't pressuring Kibler, he can just sit there and just grind out advantage by basically taking lands off the top of his library, putting them into play, and effectively drawing a card.
Yeah, and if you're Kibler, you're excited to be up a card already from that. You're not, probably, if he's thinking about anything a lot, it's that what if Shuhei has counter magic? He's got Dissolve mana up. He hasn't really played a 2-drop. He's not telegraphing that he's a particularly aggressive deck. And you see what Shuhei actually has is the Feral Invocation if he needs to cast it, and a lot of expensive threats. But Kibler can theoretically cast his Nyxborn Wolf. Probably doesn't want to do that yet. Could run Emissary out there, but doesn't want to get it countered.
Yeah, he's just going to run it out there. Yeah. It does not get countered, though. It's also not in a great position to start attacking yet either.
Right.
So Kibler doesn't really have a backup for it at the moment. I think he has, what does he have, a Savage Surge and a Nyxborn Wolf in his hand and a bunch of lands?
Yeah, I mean, and I think at this point, if you're Kibler, you're just like, okay, I want to start attacking at some point. I can sit and ride my Courser to, crazy amounts of card advantage anyway.
Yeah.
So, I can attack with Emissary and Courser. He's got to block one of them. But, okay, and we see the Siren means that he does have 2 relevant blockers again now. But
yeah, Chorus of the Tides there for Shuhei Nakamura. There he is. He's ranked number 8th on the top 25 pro rankings there, so a top 10 ranked player there. We were talking about this card a little while ago, Zach, you and I said I really appreciated Chorus of the Tides, not because it's like a overtly powerful spell, but because it asks so little of you.
Yeah, we were talking about that. It's a lot of cards in Theros are good in conditions. Other cards, even some really good cards, like, with heroic abilities, they still require you to build your deck around them. Chorus of the Tides, you can kind of just cast.
You just cast it, and then good things happen to you from that point on. It attacks for 3. If you target it with a spell of your own, you get to scry one, and yeah, it's just a solid card. Now, it looks like Kibler drew that forest that he had on top. We knew that, and he's revealed now a Ferris Band Tromper on top of his library. Remember, the Courser of Crewfix doesn't grant you additional land drops. It just lets you play them from the top of your library. So, it's not going to get him super, super far ahead, but the grind is on for sure. And right now, the board's relatively at parity. I mean, Shuhei Nakamura is going to get some pressure going with Chorus of the Tides, but it's not like that thing's going to close out the game in short order here.
Right, yeah. And the Scorpion for Shuhei is really what's keeping him in this game. The Thassa's Emissary can't quite go to town right here. I mean, he can attack with his creatures.
Wow,
he's not going to start just drawing cards.
No, and I think that Kibler's probably, said, okay, look, I'm not going to get cards out of this Emissary. I need to start moving things forward. So instead, he's just going to attack for 6 with one creature and 2 with the other. He's offering trades on either end. Shuhei Nakamura, not in a great spot here, right? I mean, look, if he wants to trade the Scorpion for something, he has to make a tough decision on what it is.
Right, and bestowing it there means that he can't trade it with Chorus of the Tides, that he's got to use the Scorpion to deal with it. Chorus of the Tides, meanwhile, can't profitably block Courser, so Courser getting in for 2 damage and has already gained Kibler several life points as well. That said, I don't know that Shuhei is in a particularly bad position.
Right.
He has multiple huge threats in his hand. He's got Coastline Chimera that can can help stabilize and, has a grip full of threats. So, I mean, there's a lot of Magic left to play in this game.
Right, so he plays Siren of the Fanged Coast, and Kibler does pay tribute, so it's a 4/4 with flying here. Kibler didn't want to give up his Courser or his Nyxborn Wolf for that matter, but so now all of a sudden Shuhei Nakamura with a 3-turn clock in the air and looking to be in pretty good position here. Kibler has gained a life here and there, almost missed a trigger on it last turn, but remembered it in time for his life gain from his Courser. But he needs to come up with more. I mean, it still looks like even after getting a little bit of value off the Courser, he still hasn't really been able to get super far ahead. And now here he is. He's going to attack with both of them. Remember, he's got that Savage Surge in his hand.
Right, and I mean, Savage Surge, he'll 2-for-1 himself if Shuhei blocks the Wolf, but getting rid of that 4/4 flyer might just be worth it anyway.
Yeah, it's pretty sad on Kibler's side to have to do that, but I think he would take it.
Yeah,
so let's see if Shuhei Nakamura can figure it out here. He's got to start thinking about what are the cards that Brian Kibler can have. Right now, the bounce spells don't really matter. Those aren't going to be important for this combat step. So Voyage's End and Grip Tight aren't super relevant here. It's more the green pump spells.
Right, exactly. Yeah, if Kibler had either of those cards, he probably would have cast it already.
Yes.
So Shuhei doesn't really need to worry about any of that.
All right, so Shuhei says, look, if you have Savage Surge, I'm fine with it. And he does. And Shuhei collects his 2-for-1 off of his Siren one way or the other. And there's the Ferris Band Tromper. Now, of course, Shuhei knew that Kibler had that. Kibler's top card of his library has been revealed for quite a while now. It's going to give Shuhei, well, a significant amount of information.
Goodness.
And here's a Horizon Scholar now from Shuhei. And this card doesn't ask much of us either. It gives us quite a bit back, right, Zach?
Well, and that's kind of why I was reacting the way I did. I mean, Shuhei's draw is just brutal. Huge flyer after huge flyer after huge flyer. Not the kind of decks you see a lot in Theros. Nothing fancy is happening. There's no enchantments. I mean, no bounce spells, even though they're the high blue picks we've seen yet. No bestow from Shuhei that he's actually used. He's got Wolf in his hand, but just monsters.
Right.
And they're seeming to get the job done right now.
There's a Sea God's Revenge revealed for Brian Kibler, so that's not going to be in his hand yet here, but that is an interesting reveal. Of course, the fact that Shuhei Nakamura knows about it means that he can play in a way to minimize its effect, but still, a card like Sea God's Revenge is a profoundly powerful Magic card. I mean, it just packs a big punch, even if there's situations where it's not great, that most of the time it's really good.
I mean, it's really powerful. It's a lot less powerful when your opponent knows that it's coming. So one of the rare drawbacks of Courser of Kruphix is that you have to give away information to your opponent. Usually drawing a bunch of extra cards is worth it, and we see Kibler quite land-flooded right now. But I think if you're Shuhei, you're like, okay, well, anything I commit to the board is going to get bounced, so I might as well bestow my Wolf and hit for 3.
That's right, and another scry. Remember, Shuhei got to scry 2 with his Horizon Scholar. He put 1 on top, 1 on bottom, and now he gets another scry, which he keeps on top.
The oft-overlooked second ability of Chorus of the Tides.
Interestingly, he plays out his Scorpion. If it gets bounced, it gets bounced.
Right.
Doesn't really change anything.
Well, the thing is, casting Sea God's Revenge here for Kibler is not bad, but it's not incredibly profitable.
No.
I mean, it really just kind of gets him back in the game. It allows him to attack for 5. I mean, again, it's not bad, but Shuhei would have a 3/1 on the board that he can crack back with Kibler at a low 8 life.
Yeah.
And Kibler's attack of 5 doesn't even get Shuhei to the halfway mark of 10.
Now, one thing about Sea God's Revenge is that it is up to 3 creatures, so like if he doesn't want to bounce the Chorus of the Tides, leaving behind the Nyxborn Wolf, that can get that 1 critical attack with Ferris Band Tromper in there so that he can start untapping with it and potentially moving things forward a bit.
Right.
But he just bounces everything, it looks like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he could do that.
He doesn't
but
mind trading there?
Well, I mean, he doesn't have a good answer for a 6-power flyer, you know.
Yeah, he's also sitting on 9 life now. He bumped up 1 thanks to the Courser of Kruphix, and he's going to attack with both. Whoa. That was interesting. Do you see that? Kibler went to attack with both, and Shuhei reached forward as if to block. Of course, wasn't quite in the declare blocker step yet there. So now Kibler's rethinking what he might want to do here. I mean, Kibler knows a lot about Shuhei's hand. He doesn't know everything.
Right. I mean, and yeah, I mean, he basically has to assume, I think, that Shuhei's hand is full of permanence. And I like that attack there because the thing is he can't really afford to take the 3 damage anyway when, Shuhei's got a grip full of flyers in his hand. And so you might as well be aggressive and try to narrow the life gap while you're a little bit ahead on the board on tempo.
All right, so Shuhei, it looks like he's going to kick off his rebuild turn here with Sedge Scorpion.
Yeah, we see the hand viewer there, not including all of the things that Shuhei just had to pick up, but I think we're going to see a lot of those on the board right now, regardless.
That's right. And, of course, the Tide. So, Sea God's Revenge doing what it does, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it set Shuhei back pretty significantly there. All right, there's a Nimbus Naiad. So now, all of a sudden, Chorus of the Tides gets a little worse. Same thing with the Horizon Scholar. If Kibler can get that Nimbus Naiad bestowed on his Courser of Crewfix, he'll have a 4/6 flying blocker that can effectively blank both of those cards.
Well, and we've seen Courser do really what it's good at. I mean, Kibler's been flooded most of this game, but playing those lands off the top means he's finally getting to some of the powerful spells that can really help stabilize in this position.
And his life total he's gained 1 life per turn.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, right. I mean, the Courser came out on turn 3. He's gained 6 life from that thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and with Shuei's 4 power on the board, that means that he actually, what would be a lethal attack now is anything but.
Right. I think you really summed it up nicely at the beginning. It is very much a Kibler type of card too, right? I mean, this is the type of cards he likes playing constructed. It's the type of cards he's won a lot of tournaments with as well. And he was probably pretty stoked to see this in his Born of the Gods pack.
Overwhelming amounts of green marginal advantage.
All right, got a couple of updates here on the back tables for you. Martin Yuza is up 1-0 over Kenji Samura, and Antoine Ruel is up 1-0 over Travis Wu. All right, there is Horizon Scholar. Now, Kiblers can't be too excited that Shuhei gets to scry 2 twice this turn already, this game already, but yeah, you do what you got to do, and Shuhei gets in there for 4.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you mentioned that. Kibler up a lot of raw cards off the Courser. Shuei's had a lot of card selection due to the scry from his creatures, and sometimes that's all you need.
That's right, and here's the bestow. So this is, Kibler has... Oh, interesting. So now all of a sudden that he has a Nyxborn Wolf on there as well. I mean, do you consider just casting a Nyxborn Wolf on its own there? Like, does it change anything here?
I mean, the thing is, the only creature it blocks is the Scorpion, which is not going to be the thing killing you. And you really want to be able to put some sort of defense in front of all those flyers.
All right, well, it looks like the Scorpion got beefed up a bit there with Nylea's Emissary. Now, that's a much different story, of course. But and that leads to Shuhei Nakamura's first game victory there over Brian Kibler. I believe that Quentin Martin's up a game over Pierre Doan. I think that's what I heard, too. All right, looks like we have a few short messages. I'll figure out who's ahead on that match, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Card House Games has all your Magic needs covered, from boosters and fat packs to a wide range of Magic accessories. Use the promo code PTVAL for 10% off your next purchase at cardhousegames.com. You've watched the Pro Tour. How about playing on the Pro Tour? Qualifiers for Pro Tour Journey into Nyx are going on now around the world, with winners earning an invitation and airfare to Atlanta this May. Visit wizards.com/PTQ for more information.
All right, here we are back, and I did get an update on Quentin Martin versus Pierre Doan, and it is Pierre who's up 1-0 over Quentin Martin. Let's take a quick look in at Travis Wu on the right side, and he is playing against Antoine Ruel on the left, and that is a heck of a board state there. It's a little tough for us to just jump in, but we'll figure it out. I'm seeing one very interesting permanent there. I see Elspeth Sun's Champion on the battlefield for Travis Wu. And it looks like he played Elspeth last turn and minused it.
Yeah, I think he wanted to get that Titan off the board for whatever reason. Normally you see
Maybe
Elspeth.
Titans. I see 2 in the yard. There might have been a couple.
Okay. Well, that's a good reason, is to clear out a pair of Titans.
Disciple of Phoenix for Antoine. 1 turn too late, it would seem.
Yeah.
Travis reveals his swamp and ships that away.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean,
wow.
Yeah, Travis, Elspeth takes over a game like very few other cards can. Travis even has a flyer to block the Sirens, so, I mean, I think this is going to be a game about Elspeth, Sun's champion.
Yeah, it was funny because when we first came here, I started on the top left as I was looking at the permanents and then looped my way around, and I thought, oh, Travis doesn't look like he's in very good shape, and then got up to Elspeth and thought, oh, well, that's a little different.
Yeah, I did the exact same thing.
Yeah, and by the time, we got acquainted, there was a few Marshmist Titans in the yard, and maybe even that Horizon Scholar potentially, too. So,
man.
Yeah.
I'll wrath your board, keep all of my guys.
His 3/7. I mean, that is just too perfect.
Yeah, the irony there.
Yeah, and now he's been able to plus Elspeth twice to bring her back up to 3, and that's tick-tock. Once she either gets to ultimate range or just makes enough tokens to start just shipping in big attacks, the game ends almost immediately.
Right, exactly. I mean, interesting that Wu has so many permanents without that many good attacks, but Ruel, I think, has had enough of this.
That was interesting. All right, so it looks like Travis Wu picks it up there. Those soldiers, he had a cavalry Pegasus, but those soldiers are soldiers. They're not human soldiers or anything like that, so something to keep in mind potentially down the line if you are unlucky enough to face down an Elspeth Sun's champion, or maybe if you have one on your
Yeah, interestingly, we had human soldier tokens in Innistrad, but we kind of backed away from that with the new sets.
Yeah, welcome back to the booth. Marshall Sutcliffe here with Zach Hill. Talking a little limited, rounding out the first round, the first 3 rounds here from Pro Tour Born of the Gods. We got to watch William Huey Jensen do his draft. We also have, that'll be in the draft viewer, and I saw that Brian David Marshall also did a deck tech here live, and it'll be available for consumption later as well on YouTube.
For breakfast, actually.
Yeah, I am thinking about breakfast. So after this one, we're going to have 3 rounds down. And the players will have kind of settled into their groove. They'll either be very happy, very sad, or somewhere in the middle. And then we're going to be bringing you modern coverage after that as we move through the first day, Friday, here at the Pro Tour.
Well, yeah, and Marshall, I know you're more of a limited guy.
I am.
But I am very excited to see what brews people have concocted.
Well, Modern's my favorite.
Oh, really?
constructed format.
I did not actually know
Yeah,
that.
it is. I play it quite a bit on Magic Online, and I love the format. And I get to step aside and be a little more of a spectator though from here. And I'm really excited to see what people came up with too.
I'm excited to see Wild Nakatl enter the battlefield for the first time in a very long time in the Modern format.
It kind of. I've watched a bunch of people play test over the last few days, and I've seen a few Wild Nakatls here and there, and it had kind of a calming presence for me. I don't know why.
It's purring softly in your ear.
I mean, it's mean. It's the card itself is quite mean, but I actually
Wild,
just like it.
say?
Hey, it looks like we're ready to back down to the feature match area, so let's cut down there. Nessie and Courser for Brian Kibler, and it looks like we're actually on turn 3 here, although there hasn't been a play yet besides that Nessie and Courser, so fair game. Shuhei Nakamura sitting on 3 lands.
And we see, is he just going to run out a Nyxborn Wolf to try and block that Courser? The answer, I think, is yes. When you're on the draw, you're really looking to trade because you're already up a card. And it looks like that's at least what Shuhei is attempting here. But, oh, wow, Feral Invocation.
For the blowout, although Shuhei missed a land drop last turn, he hits it now. I think he missed a land drop.
Oh, I was just assuming he was on the draw, but I might
of
have
course.
been wrong.
No, he didn't miss a land drop. Although he was going to if he didn't draw one off the top there because he didn't have any more in hand. But he did not miss one last turn. And there's that Scorpion doing serious work in the blue-green mirror here. No! Nimbus
goodness.
Naiad. That's 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. Take 7, Shuhei Nakamura. Drop you down to 13 and pass the turn back.
Well, and when we were designing Theros, it was exactly these type of board states that we wanted to create. I mean, just piling enchantments onto a creature, get it out early, attack for 3, 5, 7 points of damage. Boom. Just, giant chunks of the air. Huge, build a dragon by yourself.
Right, and it has that haste feel.
Yeah,
right? It wasn't just like I made a big dragon go. It was I made a big dragon, take a bunch of damage, your move. And even though that Sedge Scorpion looked quite good until the Nimbus Naiad showed up, now it looks terrible. I mean, it doesn't really offer much as far as attacking back, though it will do that. So let's
it offers 1 point of damage. Oh, wow. That's Hunt the Hunter right there.
Hunt the Hunter to kill, well, at least 2 of the 3 cards on his opponent. So it's a 2 for 2 basically, and it leaves Brian Kibler with just a Nimbus Naiad. So a nice sideboard plan there for Shuhei bringing in Hunt the Hunter.
Well, I mean, yeah, the thing is, you kind of want to use Hunt the Hunter on your heroic card, but that creature was the Courser was just so big that even with the +2/+2 from Hunt the Hunter, you couldn't get it.
Right now, Brian Kibler's back to shenanigans again. Nyxborn Wolf on his Nimbus Naiad crashes it into the red zone again for 5. Shuhei Nakamura attacks back with Staunch-Hearted Warrior and then follows up with a Nessian Asp, which currently is doing enough work here. He could trade it off, but a combat trick, a bounce spell, there's so many bad things for Shuhei here, but he's up against it. He's sitting at 8 life. I don't think he has that many choices here.
No, I mean, and I think Kibler is just looking to equip yet another Nyxborn Wolf. He's got Gainsay up to protect it, but not quite enough mana. We've seen both Hunt the Hunter and Gainsay in Kibler's hands, so the respective hosers.
I think Kibler's going to get
deck.
Shuhei here. I think Shuhei, oh, interesting. Shuhei has time to feed, and he's also got a Horizon Scholar. If he goes for Horizon Scholar, it's going to get snap gainsayed by Brian Kibler. Just get that thing out of here.
And time to feed just kind of awkward right now.
But he's doing it. Well, so remember, he can do it on his Staunch-Hearted Warrior, and he does. Does it resolve?
And you've got, it's like it's sort of a 2 for 1.
Yep, it's a 4/4, and it's going to die. So sort of a 2 for 1 in the wrong direction.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're sort of getting 2 for 1. You get 3 life. You need the life badly. The 3/1 is not that relevant right now against your Nessian Asp, so you kind of have to do it, but it's not something that you're excited about.
No, but look at the board now.
Yeah.
Right? Now all of a sudden you got Nessian Asp facing down a Nyxborn Wolf. Well, now that could change things potentially here too, as Kibler decides he can't leave Gainsay up for this turn. He needs to use up his mana, and if he's going to do it, he's going to cast his most expensive spell, which he did, Centaur Battlemaster here.
Now, this is a great time if you're Shuhei to resolve that Horizon Scholar and start getting some air attacks of your own, but it looks like what he wants to do is make Nessian Asp huge, which is a priority if Kibler has any way to make that Centaur big.
So Kibler's happy because he gets to untap with Gainsay, which could get something, but he's got to be a little bummed out that the Shuhei's going to have the 8/9 Nessian Asp up there, and does Kibler have any way to interact with it?
I think he does. I think he just drew Sudden Storm.
Oh, okay.
And theoretically, Wave Crash Triton into attaching Nyxborn Wolf. Of course, he doesn't quite have the mana to do all of that, but the Sudden Storm is a huge play for Kibler here because he has to anticipate Shuhei with 3 cards in hand now has got something to cast, and those are just going to get washed away in a hurricane right about now.
So does Kibler bother Gain? No, he does not. So he's just going to fire off, boom, boom, Sudden Storm, and Shuhei goes, this isn't good for me. And there's another Nimbus Naiad for Kibler. How many of those does he have?
What I'm thinking about is just how good Kibler's deck is.
It's sweet, yes.
Just you see Wolf after Wolf, Naiad after Naiad.
Yeah.
We see Naiad here, a really key card in the blue-green matchup because everyone has size and everyone has tricks, but what you want to do is fly over your opponent's creatures. Naiad allows you to do exactly that.
And what better to put on a green creature, right? I mean, look at that. Look at what he has here. Either of his 2 creatures, well, he shipped it though, but get flying are fantastic there.
And I guess he's thinking, okay, flying not super relevant. I need extra lands. I've already got the wolf. And what he wants to do more than anything else is protect his board with Gainsay.
This is
from,
lethal,
for example, an opposing...
That's lethal, right? That's 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's going to do it. Brian Kibler evens things up at 1 game apiece here.
Right. And having the Gainsay to protect anything that would stop that lethal attack is worth shipping the Naiad just so you can get that extra land.
Yeah.
I mean, Shuhei's tapped out.
That was a sweet one. There was a lot of big back and forth there. I mean, Kibler had a blazing start, was able to keep it up, but I mean, it didn't have to be that way. Right?
No, I mean, I didn't, it looked like Shuhei was about to stabilize for a bit, but that's not what happened.
Right. I mean, we did see that. All right, let's take a quick peek here on Quentin Martin versus Pierre Dagen, and That is a Cavern Lampad, and it is currently facing down a Traveling Philosopher with probably a Nyxborn
I think
Rollicker
that's a
on it.
Nyxborn
Yeah,
Rollicker,
and
yeah.
then a Pegasus. So life totals obviously critical here, but let's see here. Oh, it's an Everflame Eidolon.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
told,
Well,
yeah.
Vision.
That makes a difference.
That does make a big
Now,
difference.
the
You see
big
2 mountains from
the thing that
Dejan's
I'm really
side.
looking at here, though, that's just shocking is that one player has 6 lands and the other one has 3 somehow.
Well, and I mean, Martin, casting Read the Bones into Dejan's board, he's got to think he's got some life to work with. And Cavern Lampad beginning the slow and steady climb of 2 damage a turn. I mean, Dejan can attack for a pretty good chunk of damage right here.
Yeah, 2, 3, 4, 5. He can hit for 6, but he wants to develop his board. Ooh.
Oh, man. One of our favorites. A little worse when you don't have an island in play.
That's right, but at least it has haste still here. We talked about that earlier. We saw BDM talking about that on the wall as well.
So, I mean, this right here is a solid 3, 4, 6 points of damage. And Martin, despite having 3 more lands than Dejan does and permanent on the board, looks to be backpedaling right here.
A little bit, yeah. Stormcaller of Kronos doing some work here for Pierre. He's the finalist from Pro Tour Theros.
Right. Yeah, and back-to-back
Lost
Pro
to
Tour
his
top
teammate.
8s to put him in pretty good position here. He started out 2-0, so 3-0ing his first pod is where you want to be if he can do that. Quentin Martin looking to make a bit of a comeback.
Mm-hmm.
We literally ran into him on the street. Didn't know that he was attending this event, didn't know he was qualified, but he's starting it out right so far.
Yeah, Farika's Cure takes down the Cavalry Pegasus there. Keep everything safely on the ground. I know that Quentin has a Keepsake Gorgon in his hand there, and he wants to make sure that that thing does what it does best, which is gum up the ground in a huge way, and it looks like it's going to be able to do that, but he must have other options. He has 4 cards in his hand. One of them's a Plains, and there's 2 unknowns, so clearly he has a lot of ways he can go here. I think that's a Vanquish the Foul. He's going to attack. He's going to keep attacking
the
here.
foul. No 4-power creatures to target, unfortunately.
And there's that Keepsake Gorgon.
Yeah, and I love casting Gorgon there. I mean, you
God, I
want to
love that.
activate as soon as you can. The body is relevant at this point. Even the 1/1 counter is relevant at this point when you want to start pressuring Dejan before he gets more lands.
That card is so sick.
Card's really good.
I love that card. I'm told that Ruel has won 2-1 over Travis Wu.
Oh, man. Travis Wu, though, did have a cooler hat. So, there's
I think he
that.
may have de-hatted for the feature match.
no.
right there.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
It's a
He's in
travesty.
business mode.
Yeah, and
I mean, we
Dejan's-
are in Spain.
We are. That's
had a
true.
pretty,
It's Mediterranean climate. He's got
He
kind
had
of
the
a
kind of
Arctic.
Yeah, the Arctic
wear
hat
on.
on. Yeah.
But it's awesome.
Hey, an island here.
Wow.
That could change things.
Yeah,
Stormcaller of Karanos now active.
It can change things by making Stormcaller active. It can change things by being a 4th land. Unfortunately, the time you don't want to activate Stormcaller is when you need to empty your hand because your opponent has just cast Keepsake Gorgon and is going to kill one of your creatures.
All right, looks like we're going to hop back over to Shuhei Nakamura versus Brian Kibler here. This match is tied at 1-1. So these players are both 2-0. So the winner of this will 3-0 their pod, get the perfect start going. Shuhei Nakamura is known as a draft master. I mean, the guy's insane. Now Kibler is known a little bit more for his constructed prowess, but he's an excellent limited player. Like, you can't, it's weird because I think people tend to think if you're good at one thing, you're not necessarily as good at the other. And I mean, Kibler has done fine in limited. You know, he's
look.
not one of the premier guys, but like, he's a really top level player in limited as well.
Yeah, I mean, Kibler has won a mixed format Pro Tour.
Right, exactly.
He's no limited slash. And the thing
Yes.
is, when you've been playing Magic for as long as these guys have, like, you're just good at Magic.
Right. Oh,
You
speaking
know-
about being good at Magic, Kibler shows us why as he plays that Courser of Crufix right
skill
on
game.
time and then values out a couple of lands here. So looking pretty good for Kibler there in the early stages as Shuhei Nakamura has, well, he's got nothing so far, just some lands.
Yeah, this looks awful eerily like the first game, except that Kibler doesn't appear to be nearly as mana flooded. We see a handful of extremely good cards right here. Nimbus Naiad,
Here's a
Battle
Wavecrash
Master.
Triton for Kibler, but it's going to get Gainsayed. So it looks like they've both brought in Gainsay for the mirror match here.
So Shuhei has both Hunt the Hunter and Gainsay. Fascinating.
Yes, that solid sideboard plan there. There's Chorus of the Tides for Shuhei, but Brian Kibler brings some beef to the table here potentially with the Centaur Battlemaster.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to expect that Shuhei doesn't want a 2-for-1 himself just to get that Battlemaster gone, meaning that Savage Surge will threaten to turn that creature huge in short order.
Yeah, Centaur Battlemaster in the blue-green mirror is scary.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, you can usually bounce it once. You know, you can get rid of its work once, but like if you don't have that, you're in big trouble. Here's Siren of the Fanged Coast for Shuhei Nakamura. No tribute paid, of course, again for Kibler. He likes his board state just the way it is, and he's going to let Shuhei have a 4/4 flyer here. So an air elemental, as we call them in the business for Shuhei, one of the better creatures historically for limited.
Yeah, we see no lands on top of Kibler's deck. There's a Nyxborn Wolf there. That says with 6 mana, Nimbus Naiad in hand, he has a lot of options right now. He can suit up the Battlemaster. He can suit up Courser of Krufix, and so that it can attack through Siren of the Fane Coast, threatening to suit up Battlemaster next turn. But it looks like he just wants to get as much size on the table as he can.
How does 8 power and toughness suit you in the size department?
It's not weak.
Not weak at all. So there it is, 8 damage to Shuhei Nakamura. Remember, Kibler is gaining some incremental life gain there from his Courser of Krufix, which, I mean, that can be a turn.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think it is right here literally a turn, totally negating the attack of the Chorus of the Tides. And now, I mean, Nakamura, the best thing he can do is like set up a double block or something right now. It really needs to get some sort of bounce spell or I guess Time Defeat plus a Sedge Scorpion would do it. But
we talked about it a minute ago, Zach. When you're in a green-blue deck, your options are fairly limited, and I mean that's an 8/8 flyer.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big issue
Shuhei
here.
really needs like a Voyage's End or a Griptide or something,
Yes.
or he's going to start having to sacrifice a creature like every turn.
Yeah, I mean other colors have ways to kill that thing,
right?
Sip it away or excoriate it or whatever, but blue-green's tools in that department are a lot more limited.
Right.
There is a Time Defeat for Shuhei. Is that even enough, though? No, right?
I don't think so.
No, it's an 8/8. So
yeah, it's a big meal if it's Time to feed. But
take a look at Shuhei
killing
here. This is him looking quite unhappy. Kibler's in battle mode here.
Now, sometimes you're trying to make a stew with no ingredients. He's trying to make something work. He has a handful of good Magic cards, but they're just not good enough to deal with an 8/8 flyer right here.
All right, Shuhei's going to attack for 4 to start things off. That's going to bring Kibler down to 16. And there's a Nessian Asp for Shuhei Nakamura, and he passes the turn back. So an Asp plus a Chorus of the Tides, still not enough.
Yeah.
He's got another Nyxborn
Yeah,
Wolf
you see
revealed
Kibler
as
draw
well.
a Nyxborn Wolf, revealing another Nyxborn Wolf, just in case you thought his creatures weren't big enough. Think again. He's now able to suit up the Courser and attack with it if he wants to. And it looks like that's exactly what we're going to see happen. Again, leaving Gainsay mana up. The only thing that can save Shuhei right now is something like a Voyage's End, a Griptide, or a Sea God's Revenge, and those just aren't going to resolve. And Shuhei being at 8 just has to chump block right
He must chump block, and even then he's taking 5, dropping him down to 3 here. And Shuhei's going to untap here, but is there a card that gets him out of this? I suppose the Scorpion would do it.
Yeah, I mean, Scorpion would at least allow him to stabilize. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, this has been a weird game. I mean, Shuhei has cast powerful cards.
Yeah, and his hand is still quite good, but it's because we're dealing with the mirror here with these 2 blue-green decks.
Exactly. I mean, and again, Courser just showing how powerful it is, getting Kibler a little bit of card advantage, making sure that Shuhei can't just race back in the air with his flyers, and
And
actually
that's going to
attacking.
do it. Yeah, Brian Kibler is victorious. Shuhei takes a quick peek at the top of his good friend Brian Kibler's library. Not recommended to do that to your random opponent, but if you happen to know the person, and if it happens to be the third round of your Pro Tour, then yeah, you can probably get away with that one. So Brian Kibler improves to 3-0 in the limited portions, and I'm curious to see what him and Team Channel Fireball, including Shuhei Nakamura, by the way, came up with for Modern. Let's jump over. We're back on Quentin Martin here versus Pierre Dagen, and
Well, is that an abhorrent overlord?
that is an abhorrent overload. I'm like, are those harpies? Yes, those are harpies. And he's got a ton of them here. He's facing down an Everflame Eidolon still. Oh, and there's another Afara's Warden. That's the second one we've seen in the feature match today. Did that card get better sometime recently? Because in Theros, that card saw almost no play.
Well, I mean, you know, it's probably hard to evaluate. I know that, like, the monstrous mechanic was one of the reasons that the card was worse because, you know, the creatures were just huge and got huger.
Yes.
So, you know, a lot of the time you want your tapper to neutralize their biggest threat. It can't do that. But in this format, you know, a lot of the tribute guys, it's like, okay, do you let them be bigger or do you, you know, take some damage? But, if, you know, that means it's up to you and you can tap down their smaller creatures. The other thing is I think it's just, you know, without 3 packs of a set, there's just not as much redundancy. So I think it's a little bit harder to put together, you know, the crazy Ordeal deck, the crazy Wingsteed Rider deck. All those cards are still good, but just with more variance, I think it's just more likely that your opponent's likely to have smaller creatures earlier in the game.
Right, I can see behind that match there, I saw Martin Yuza sitting by himself. I'm assuming that means that he won his match versus Kenji. He did. He won his match versus Kenji Samura 2-0. Again, we had Antoine Ruel versus Travis Wu. Antoine Ruel wins that 2-1. And in our main feature match, we just saw Brian Kibler win 2-1 over Shuhei Nakamura. That leaves us with but one. And it is Pierre Dagen. We see him here on the left there looking at his sideboard as he just got evened up 1 game apiece against Quentin Martin from England on the right.
Yeah, Quentin's deck has a lot of powerful black cards. We've seen, I believe, Keepsake Gorgon it was. We've seen Abhorrent Overlord.
Yes.
Has Read the Bones, one of the premier commons. You know, selection plus card advantage at the mere cost of 2 life. Now, Marshall, you might not want to cast that when your opponent has Spirit of the Labyrinth. Not that you know anything about that. Not that that happened in a draft the other night. But
I did. I paid 3 mana, I paid a card, and I paid 2 life to scry 2.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
And it probably won you the game because you needed to draw on
It actually did win me the game, but I'd be lying if I say that I knew I knew the Spirit of Labyrinth was there, and I just whiffed on it.
Yeah, well, you're like, okay, yeah, that's that ability that matters in Legacy. It's
right.
You know, in Limited,
not,
you draw 1 card a turn, right?
It never happens. It does happen, especially when your opponent is Rashad Miller and he starts going, and he's like, no.
You try to take it back. He's like, no, that card's legal to cast right now.
That game was unbelievable, though.
Why
I'm going to give you a highlight of it. There was a point in the game where I was at 2 life.
Oh, yeah?
At a different point in the game, he was at 176 life.
Oh, my goodness.
I won very easily.
You won very easily?
Yeah, I crushed
it was not close, as people say.
I mean, when you're... Yeah, I can play against somebody like Rashad, run my Read the Bones into a Spirit of the Labyrinth, and win pretty easily, I think, generally speaking. Just saying.
Oh yeah, was that a humble brag or was that just a brag?
It took 30 turns. He could have decked me or beat me with damage at any point, but I had a Bow of Nylea to get me out of it. We haven't seen one of those in the feature match area. We saw a similar kind of grindy card with that Courser of Crufix.
Yeah. Another 1 GG.
Bow doesn't block though, you know.
Or attack, as we saw with that Courser and Nyxborn Wolf. That was a lot of damage.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. 2/4 for 3 mana. You don't get that very often. That's a nice one.
Mike Turian Giant Slug stats.
Yeah, that's right. Take a look at Pierre there.
I think we're going to actually get a Spirit slide up soon so we can understand what on earth we're talking about with all these card names. But
If we put it up, I probably won't see it.
Yeah. Certainly didn't see it earlier. It looks like we're playing actual Magic the Gathering right now. We see a mountain come out of I believe that's
yeah, we'll get on the overhead cam once we can. There's a bronze sable to kick things off for Pierre here. We have a view of a different angle from the booth, but we will be getting you the overhead cam shortly here. Quentin Martin, there it is. So there's a bronze sable. Perhaps not the most aggressive one, but it looks like Quentin Martin here says, you know what, I need to block that thing. I don't want to take any damage from it. I'm going to run Hopeful Eidolon out there as a 1/1. You rarely see that.
You don't see that very often unless you have a lot more enchantments, but I think Quentin, based on his deck from last game, he's got the late game shored up. He's got the Overlord, got lots of things to do with his mana, has some card draw, just wants to survive. When your opponent plays a turn 2 Bronze Sable, he's committing to a really aggressive start. And if he wants to suit up the Sable, in that case you're in a race, and an extra 1 life a turn can be really useful there too. So
okay.
The play makes
it
some
seems
sense, but you
bad
don't
for
see it a
Quentin,
lot.
though, if Pierre does throw an Everflame Eidolon on it, right?
It's not good for him.
I mean, now he can't block with his Eidolon. Getting the 1 back is cute, but not, amazing.
I mean, it's a mana a turn. You know, I mean, it's it's certainly not great for you if your opponent has pants there or something to enchant Sable with. But I think you play the hand you're dealt, and
I believe you should explain the term pants. I don't think everybody knows what that means.
Pants is just an old school term for creature enchantments. Right. So in Theros block, a lot of creatures wear a lot of pants.
Is that a Borderland Minotaur there?
That is. That's a card.
Attaboy. Just play the vanilla. I like the vanilla. I like a lot of flavor text.
Marshall and I were talking about how much we liked cards that are just straightforwardly good in a format that's sometimes so dependent upon synergy that it's easy to forget that Magic fundamentals still apply.
Right.
Card drawing's still good. Creatures with great stats for the mana cost are still good, and it looks like Martin's probably going to try to trade with the 4/3.
Yeah. So we see what's going on with Quentin Martin's side of the battlefield here, though, is he's missing land drops, and I think that he knew. Look, it's going to be a while. I might never get to bestow this Eidolon, either of them, and so he's just going to sort of aggressively play them out to try to get value. Now, Rage of Perforos, though, takes down that Baleful Eidolon, but Quentin does find his 4th land here. It's another swamp, and he's also got a Pharika's Cure in his hand. So, his hand, he knows if this game goes long, it's going to be his.
Exactly.
It's his job in the early stages here to facilitate the longest game possible. He can grind. I saw that he has, let's see what he plays here. All right, so a Disciple of Phoenix as maybe a blocker in a bit, but also he's going to take away some cards from his opponent's hand, which is Loyal Pegasus or a Griptide there.
Yeah, and I think you have to take that Griptide because you need to draw lands if you're Quentin. Knowing that you're drawing a creature on the top of the deck, really very bad for you. All of that being said, Martin definitely missed a land drop, but at 17 life, he has a little bit of padding to get some time to draw out of this.
Yeah, let's make it 13.
Yeah, 13 now after that attack. Now, what Dijon chose not to show Martin is the Chain to the Rocks in his hand, which could deal with theoretically any threat that Martin casts.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable removal spell in a format that doesn't have that many great removal spells. Of course, it's at rare. And is that another? Yeah, so another Baleful Eidolon. Now, another reason that Quentin Martin is being so aggressive about trading off his cards is that he has a Griffin Dreamfinder in his hand that can buy them back. So it's all coming together here as we see Quentin's line of missing land drops potentially, and combine it with the fact that he can recoup the card disadvantage, and that's why we see him playing out, his bestow creatures without bestowing them.
Right, and even though this Baleful Eidolon is getting exiled to Chain to the Rocks, the other one died the good old-fashioned way.
That's
so
right.
That Dreamfinder can get it right back.
All right, so Quentin actually takes it. He did not fire off that. That's a Kragma Butcher. Now he's going to use his Pharika's Cure, though, to put him back up to 10. He decided to risk it in case there was some bigger threat, takes 1 extra damage as a result. Draws his card. It's not a land, and it's a Laganaban Elder.
Which could theoretically double up with the Disciple on the 4/3, assuming your opponent has absolutely nothing.
Right.
Now, that's not always a great assumption, but Dijon only has 1 card in hand, and he didn't keep his Pegasus alive through the Pharika's Cure, which suggests that he probably doesn't have, or at least can't cast, anything that would boost his creature's toughness. Now, at 1 mana, and he only with 1 red mope, and that's basically Titan's strength. But he still only has 2 cards in his hand on this attack. I think a double block from Quentin, I guess is I mean, is not awful. He's got a 3-2. I guess the Giants a 4-3, so you can just solo block.
He can solo block either one that he wants. All right, so Quentin Martin gets a little bit of breathing room. Flamespeaker Adept for Pierre means that he can try to draw land, and he hits it.
Does,
all right,
but it's not a second
It is
Plains.
not. You're right. So he does not get to cast that. Now, does he have other options here, though? He's got double Griffin Dreamfinder. He's going to have to go for Read the Bones here. He can't be comfortable doing this, but he just needs to dig, and he finds double Plains. We know he's going to keep one of those.
Yeah, and
he also has a Born Overlord in his hand that he wants to build up to.
And I think that's what you have to do is just take mana and try to cast that Overlord as soon as you can. I mean, you've got a chump blocker. You can trade.
That would leave him with 3 lands in his hand, which would mean he could go land up to a Born Overlord. But you also got to figure he might draw one as well. Probably the standard play would be to put one on top, one on bottom here.
Yeah,
Make sure you get the second white source. He's got another land drop for next turn no matter what.
I think that's you're probably right. Mm-hmm. I mean, the one thing is you have to hit each of these land drops. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think
the thinking is he's going to play Griffin Dreamfinder next turn. He's going to play another Griffin Dreamfinder the next turn. Then he's going to have a Baleful Eidolon and a Hopeful Eidolon. He has stuff to do.
Sure.
Right? So that's probably the thinking here. But we'll see what he does, or will we?
Well, we may infer what he does.
Yeah. I couldn't see. We had the close-up shot when he actually did that, but he's got at least one of the planes in his hand.
Yeah, so it
here.
looks like he did what you were saying, Marshall. Kept one of the planes, put another card at the bottom, drew a threat.
And he looks like he drew another planes anyway.
Okay, well maybe he did. I didn't see the second plane, so yeah, maybe he kept him.
He either kept them or drew one. Yeah.
But in any case, that's what's in his hand is planes, Overlord, Dreamfinder.
So Quentin Martin is stable, but it's close, right? I mean, right now,
extremely close.
He can trade. All right, and Pierre's had enough. He's shipping the squad in here, so in they come. Martin says block. He doesn't really have a lot of choices along those lines.
Yeah, and kind of the obvious
and
blocks.
That happens,
but, I mean, if you're Dejan, you get Martin down to 6. You get to untap with your inspired creature, which is always nice.
Kragma Butcher becomes a 4/3, so it kind of replaces that Borderland Minotaur
exactly.
Anyway. And here we go, the first Griffin Dreamfinder, and there's going to be more where that came from. Is he getting Baleful Eidolon? Interesting, he is. He's going to want to get that Hopeful Eidolon to get his life total up later. Remember, there's a lot of cards in this format that can close out a life total like that. But for now, he wants to play Baleful Eidolon.
And he is still thinking about it. But I mean, the other thing that Baleful Eidolon does is give you black mana symbols for when you do get around to casting that Overlord.
And does he hit his land here? He did play it, right?
Yes.
He played that plane.
It's under his wrist right now, I think.
So he can't do it now.
Oh, okay.
He is going to get that. Now, interestingly, he didn't play a plains last turn, so he could have and then played a plains this turn and actually played that Eidolon, but it probably wants to, instead he probably wants to try to bestow it onto something. All right, in they come.
Right.
Remember, the Kragma Butcher's a 4/3 thanks to its Inspired trigger.
Which means that he can't block it with a Griffin like you'd ordinarily. Wait. So, okay. He's deciding to lose the Griffin instead of the Disciple. The reason he's doing that, I think, is to set up an Abhorrent Overlord next turn. So, kind of set up the first blocks and was like, I don't know about that.
And this is one of those things where Pierre probably will have figured that out and unfortunately just can't do anything about it. He's like, great,
exactly.
Here comes an Abhorrent Overlord.
Right. Now, one of the things he can sort of do about it, that Ill-Tempered Cyclops, very powerful right here, because Trample means Quentin can't just throw Harpies in front of it forever.
That's
Might
true.
have to actually block it with the Overlord.
Yeah. And if he does, that leaves him without a great target for Hopeful Eidolon. So, yeah, it could absolutely matter here.
I mean, he still has 4 Harpies.
Yes.
So
it's certainly
hard
not
to
awful.
underrate that.
But, I mean, I think when I'm thinking about how this game plays out, I think Quentin Martin eventually puts Hopeful Eidolon on his Abhorrent Overlord, hits for 7, and the game kind of ends there. Like, not literally, but, if he goes back up to 13, drops Pierre down to 13, it's like, it's hard to imagine that Pierre's deck can overcome a threat that big. So it does matter here for sure if Quentin gets to untap with an Overlord or not. Now, another thing is, Overlord does start eating your own creatures, right? So Quentin might take it as a favor and say, look, if you want to trade your nice threat for my Overlord, I'll take this nicely developed board state. Remember, Quentin Martin also has another Dreamfinder on its way
Right.
too, so he's in grind mode here for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and definitely Quentin did what he needed to do to try and win this game. You know, he was his back was against the wall. He was missing land drops, but he stabilized.
Yep.
He's got 4 Harpy tokens. He's got a 6/6 flyer. And Dejan, you know, not a bad board, but the thing is, you know, even if he attacks, Martin doesn't quite die here. And you're exactly right. Having Eidolon, which was a smart choice he made earlier, means that he can turn it around on the Overlord very fast. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he had to set up this play several turns in
advance. That was 3
advance.
turns ago.
Yeah.
All right, and he is. Look, he's like, this is fine by me. I'm going to just use up my board state here. I can grind stuff back, trade off, dies, everything dies, except for the...
dies,
dead.
everything dies.
They all die except for the 2/3 there.
How big of a blowout would
Wow.
Titan strength have been on that Cyclops right then?
Yeah, that would have been super good. But Quentin did not play around that. He just drew Keepsake Organ, by the way, off the top too. So the shields are fully up here. And he needs to, this is the point in the game where he has just turned the corner and should be able to close out this match. He needs to figure out, A, what the cleanest way to get to that victory is, and B, what are the ways that he can lose from here and make sure that he doesn't play into any of those. He doesn't want to get impatient, needs to keep on a nice plan here.
Yeah, I mean, and basically all you have to do, I mean, Quentin's deck, and you can tell that Quentin is an old school player because it's a very old school deck.
Grind.
You know, grind, gain card advantage. And we've seen him gain card advantage this game on like 4 separate occasions. Well, or 3, and he's threatening to bestow. Now, Gorgon, tempo, and card advantage. Overlord, big threat and card advantage. Disciple of Phoenix. I mean, his deck is just a bunch of 2-for-1s or better.
Right.
And the plan, I think, is just cast those until your opponent submits to the attrition.
Right.
And
A second Kragma Butcher here for Pierre to replace the one that died last turn.
And
He still has a Flame
It's a
Speaker
good
Adept.
card.
It is a good card, but man, Keepsake Organ's the card.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh, wow.
oh, interesting. So he's going to put the Eidolon on his 1/1 flyer just because it's the one that can get in the easiest. And, you know, really just gaining 2 life is actually quite big here. And what a turn here for Quentin Martin. I mentioned he had turned that corner. Now we're fully walking the path of victory here as he plays Griffin Dreamfinder, grabs back that Eidolon, and uses up all his mana for the turn and puts himself in a commanding position. Remember, Keepsake Organ still hasn't been activated either. So he's got a nice insurance plan there in case Pierre comes up with some big bomb.
And the 1/3 and the 1/4 extremely effective against your board or your opponent's board of 2/2/3 creatures. Good cards, but just neither of them quite capable of breaking through at this point.
It's funny. I mean, Quentin Martin from his untapped creatures there has what 5, 9, 12 toughness.
Yeah, exactly.
Just the brick walls are in effect here for Quentin Martin. And he's got a little bit of an attack going here, too. And Pierre says, your move.
We see a pair of Eidolons in Martin's hand. And
he just drew a Scholar of Athreos, too. So it's getting worse.
Yeah, okay. And so now he's suiting up the Griffin. Oh, wow. Okay.
So 1, 2,
Air
3, 4, 5. That's 5 power in the air, can't be blocked, and they all have lifelink. So Quentin Martin jumps up to 13, Pierre down to 12, and it looks like the writing's on the wall, and it is. Quentin Martin. He is, yes, 3-0. So that's going to be his first draft pot.
And that's a pretty powerful comeback. You know, a lot of the time, older school players, you know, they've got that limited mastery. The question is, do they have a constructed deck? So I think this is one of those times where Quentin really needed to play into his strengths and 3-0 this pod just to put himself in a position to do okay in Modern. Maybe, you know, draw well and, you know, make a run for top 8.
All right, welcome back to the booth, guys. Marshall Sutcliffe here with Zach Hill, and those are great. We had some really good matches there. I always get excited at the Pro Tour because the sets are so fresh, right? I mean, this is the first time we get to see pro-level play with the brand new set and to see what changes and what's been moving around. You know, for Born of the Gods, not earth-shattering, right? We didn't have anything massive take place, but we do get to start to get a feel now. Remember, there's another draft to do at this tournament as well for the subtle changes and for some of the bigger ones too. All right, looks like we're ready to head back over to the news desk. We're going to be talking a little Modern. When we come back, we're going to be bringing you the constructed rounds from day one here at Pro Tour Born of the Gods. Don't go anywhere.
All right, thanks very much to limited information specialist Marshall Sutcliffe and Zach Hill in the booth here, giving you the call on all the draft action. I am with a gentleman who is doing rather nicely, thank you, in the world of Magic right now. Mr. Ari Lax, great to have you. Thanks for joining us here in the news desk. So, before we get on to team matters, because ultimately it's every man for him, her, or self, let's find out how you are doing in the world of Magic. Let's start the story with the last round of Pro Tour Dragon's Maze, which is the last match of last season. And you are up against who?
Luis Scott Vargas.
And what is at stake?
At stake is Platinum and quite a bit of pride, I'd have to say.
Okay, and who wins?
Luis very handily defeats me in a mirror match.
Okay, so he then goes off into the Platinum Sunset.
Yep.
And you are then faced with a decision that a lot of us would love to be faced with. We're really, really good at Magic, but we are not on this train of the top 15, 20 players.
Right.
So what do we do now? What do you do now? How did you go through that process of evaluating where you were in Magic at that point?
So starting at Pro Tour Montreal, I believe, I had been working with somewhere between mid-sized test group, started by, it was myself, Craig Wesco, Alex West, and Emmanuel Sudor, with a rotating cast of players. And at that time, those of us who were qualified for Dublin sat down and said, we need to focus on acquiring people for the long term, because that was one of our issues.
Right.
And we said, who was queued for multiple Pro Tours next season? Who was gold? And who do we actually want on our team? And the big standout, the immediate first standout, was Chris Fennell.
Okay, limited specialist.
Yeah, limited specialist. That had been our weakness up to that point. He's probably one of the best limited players in the world. Let's pick him up. With him came a package deal with Steve Mann, who put up pretty awesome numbers over the last year as well.
He has a top 8 in the last 18 months at Pro Tour.
Yep. We picked up Mark Lulligue, who had been helping us since Montreal, who, while being unqualified, had qualified for Dublin. And let's see, who else do we have for that Pro Tour? We picked up Frank Scar and Alec Neskin, and we tried to create this sort of solid core.
Yeah, and I like that idea of sort of avoiding the churn, because of course a lot of players, they qualify for a PT, they don't make top 25. That means they're back to a PTQ or a top 8 at a GP and so on.
Right.
And you were like, let's try and avoid that. Let's find people who can plan for at least 3 or 4 shots at this thing.
Exactly, because it's a really big deal, because you play with someone the first time, it's really hard to judge how when they make a comment, what does that mean in terms of that? Who should be doing which kinds of work? These are all really important things to learn, and you can't learn that if it's just like, oh, see you in 3 Pro Tours.
Okay, so where do you, at that point then, as the new season is about to start, what are your personal goals? Are they tied in with the team goals?
My team goals and personal goals, I guess, were fairly similar. Just to, I had gone from PT Seattle was my last PT invite, and I finished 9th there, and then immediately ranked up enough points, got gold on the year, and was like, let's keep doing this, and let's create a shell of people who can keep doing this, because that's what ends up leading to further success.
Yep.
Yeah.
Certainly seemed to work.
Yes.
So let's bring things up to date in terms of the season you've had, again, personally, which, quite frankly, I think has taken you to another level. I think, now, where does that come from? Because it's not just about the success. The way you're playing seems to be just better than you played before.
Honestly, it's, I feel like I've looked back to, all the way back to my first Pro Tour, and I've always had I don't feel like I'm playing significantly better when I'm playing at my best. It's just I am focusing more for events, and I am playing my best more often.
Right, so you're leaving less on the battlefield, as it were? No free wins to opponents?
It's, more events. Every event that I'm going to go to, I'm going to test and devote pretty much 100% to it. Every single one, every Grand Prix, that was always my strength, was, it's a Grand Prix. I'm just going to test harder than everyone else, have the best list of the best deck, and easily win every match I play.
Well, that's a perfectly reasonable goal. It's fair to say that a lot of players, one thing that holds them back from going from good to great is the acknowledgement that they are only good and not great. And in particular, that often applies one way or the other to either limited or constructed. In your case, you're very frank about saying, I feel more comfortable with 60 cards in my hand and knowing that there's 15 over there to do things with.
I've actually come to realize that it's not the actual play part. Like, I feel pretty comfortable with all the combat trick stuff. It's just the way I pick up draft formats and constructed formats, it's very difficult. I have to play a lot more, I think, to pick up a draft format than I would constructed, and it's just very hard to play a lot of draft matches to the extent I need. So I just said, I need to figure out how to get limited down pat in a much more concise way. And the current concise way is, Chris Fennell, what do you think?
Yeah, and what he thinks involves going to Mexico City, which is a really interesting thing, because I'm scanning the results from the last weekend in Paris and Mexico City, and there aren't a ton of big names. Most of them are holed up in test rooms. But your test room turned out to be send Craig Wesco and Chris Fennell and Mark Lolligue to Mexico City.
Yeah, it's just, Chris, play as many limited games as possible. Mark, do your best to get qualified for more Pro Tours. Yeah.
How did that go?
It went fairly well. It was actually a big joke. You know, Harry Corviz was at a PTQ that weekend. He did poorly. He looked, and the coverage had just mentioned Craig, Seth Manfield, and Chris all bombing out of the Grand Prix, and Joe Demestrio doing poorly in Paris. And he's just like, man, no one's doing well. And my immediate comment's like, well, Mark's 7-1. And Harry's just like, as soon as I read them, I'm just like, Mark's going to win this GP. What was I thinking?
And indeed he did. Mark Lolligue winning his second Grand Prix title there, previously ending Paul Rietzl's run at a North American GP in the final. Rietzl was undefeated to that point. So Mark Lolligue can really take down the big guns when he wants to.
He has his shining moments for sure.
Okay, let's get to the team, and here we are, and we've already talked about the limited acquisition of Chris Fennell. Let's talk a little bit about the constructed edition of Conley Woods.
So after Pro Tour Theros, at some point at that event, Conley and I and some people on the team have been, and Chris, I believe, have been discussing, you know, we both felt that there were things that could have been corrected in our team process, and it was just like a good, very, very good chat. And then a couple months down the line, Harry's like, hey, Conley kind of wants to work with us. You guys want to work with him? We're just like, yes, please.
Is it a trick question?
Yeah. And he's been absolutely great. Everyone's like, yeah, Conley's this brewer. His technical play is absolutely amazing. He's blown me away when testing.
That's worth knowing.
It's, I've been very impressed with him on the team so far.
Okay, now there is a lunch break about to start here, and we want to make sure you get food. So let me just ask you this. You're heading into Modern. How are the team as a whole doing? I don't need chapter and verse, but what is the sense of how draft has gone as a group?
I think most of us have felt that our draft knowledge was great. Our draft portions have gone reasonably well.
You're 2-1?
I'm 2-1.
Conley 2-1?
Conley's 2-1. Harry's 2-1. Matt McCullough is 2-1. Shrout and Joe Demestrio were 2-0 last I checked.
Okay.
Seth Manfield is 2-1. Oh, Conley's 1-2. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
And Mark Lolligue was 0-2. I think that we're on the plus side of wins, but not drastically.
And the thing is, you can't win a Pro Tour on the first morning.
Right.
But Shota Yasuoka at 0-3, you can sure come close to losing it.
Well, we all saw Paulo at that one.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. Listen, fantastic stuff. All the very best. It's great to see you on the top of your game, and indeed very close to the top of the game. Ari Lax, everyone, and best of luck to Team TCG player. Thanks a lot, Ari. All right, so that's Ari Lax there. He's going to head on out because I'm going to replace you with a Hall of Famer, I'm afraid. So it's a bit of a strict upgrade, I think we can acknowledge. Mr. Randall J. Buehler is going to come in and talk to us about Modern. But first, I'm going to talk to you here on the desk just to give you some results from what we have so far. So we've been concentrating on a couple of pods in the last 3 rounds that we've been looking at. Thomas van Heerden, I can tell you, of South Africa, has defeated Shota Yasuoka by 2-1, and that means that is the South African's first match win in Pro Tours, the Cape Town PTQ winner. And Shota Yasuoka is at 0-3 and in big, big trouble. Wei Quan Wong of Singapore, he defeated Elias Watsfeld by 2-0, so that puts Wei Quan Wong from Singapore to 3-0. Ben Lundqvist defeated Raf Levy, so Lundqvist, Benny beat down Channel Fireball, he's 2-1. Rasmus Björklund defeated Jason Southworth in the 1-1 matchup, so the Swede Björklund is now 2-1. William Jensen over Don van Ravensvaart of Australia, that's Jensen 2-1. We saw him draft, we heard him talk about his picks on the draft viewer. You can check out every pick on the draft viewer for all 8 seats in Jensen's draft. Wenzel Krautmann defeated Spencer Garnier 2-1. Antoine Ruel over Travis Wu was in the feature match area. And one of the last results to come in was Nico Boni going to 3-0 over Francesco Hugini of Italy. So that is draft in the books for day 1. And I'm delighted to say that we have Mr. Randy Buehler here with us, and we are going to talk about Modern. Oh,
let's do it.
Yes. So coming up in just a minute from now.